Ladies and gentlemen, it is my hope that you're fine wherever you are. I'm also okay. Allow me to welcome you to another episode of Raw Politics. In today's episode, I want us to look at the former Deputy President, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, with specific attention on what led to his downfall. Now, I know opinion is divided. There are those who say Rigathi is actually at the top of his game currently, so they would be wondering what downfall am I referring to? I mean, some argue that because Rigathi currently has the sympathy of the Kikuyu masses behind him, and that somehow he controls them, that means he has achieved a lot, politically speaking. And so, in that case, you can't describe him as somebody who is failing. But then, ladies and gentlemen, we need to look at things objectively, not emotionally. Objectively, Rigathi Gachagua was the second most powerful human being in Kenya. He was the second in command, just one person away from the presidency of the republic. In fact, when President Ruto was not in the country, the person who was acting in that capacity was none other than Rigathi Gachagua. And you could see how he enjoyed the trappings of power. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why Rigathi Gachagua was literally begging to be allowed to continue being the deputy president. When he was in a church begging to be allowed to continue being the deputy president of the republic, he already had the sympathy of the Kikuyus behind him. He had done a Meet the People tour where he was met by a willing crowd, a crowd that now believed in him. So if the crowds, if the support of the Kikuyu was more important, was making him more powerful than he was, he wouldn't have gone to the church to beg. If you remember when he was saying, if I've wronged you, please forgive me, to err is human. He said a lot of things, even crying in that church, asking that William Ruto spares him from impeachment. In fact, he even said that he only wanted to serve until the end of his term. That is what reality is. Rigathi Gachagua knew the difference between being a spokesperson of the people as an opposition leader and being in power. That is why even as the opposition currently, he is saying that he wants to vie. Why can't he just be okay with being the spokesperson of the Kikuyus? Because that does not give you real power. So back to what I was saying. I want us in this video to look at what really brought Rigathi Gachagua down. What made someone who would give directions on policies, someone whose opinion would shape how the country is run, especially because he was chairing all cabinet subcommittees, to an individual who has to do repeated interviews in vernacular stations just to stay afloat, just to be relevant. Somebody who now has to coin lies to remain relevant. What happened? That is what we are going to look at, ladies and gentlemen. And I must give a disclaimer. Anytime I do a video about Rigathi Gachagua, there are some who come with fixed mind. And they're like, you hate Kikuyus, you hate Gachagua. No, the videos we do here are for our learning. For instance, we want to learn what is it that Rigathi Gachagua did not do well that we could learn from, hoping that some of you are interested in politics long term. You might want to vie, or you are already in position of power, and these are the pitfalls, the loopholes, and the things that you need to look at so that you don't fall in the same trap. So, ladies and gentlemen, whatever we are saying here is not to discredit the man. It's not to make the man look bad. It is simply to point out areas that he messed or continue messing in that we could, if we are interested in politics or posterity, avoid. And if you are finding value already, like this video and share it with friends. I'll also ask you to consider taking a second and subscribing to the channel. Ladies and gentlemen, while going to school at a very early age, there is this teacher who consistently told us that experience is the best teacher. He said this so repeatedly that we nicknamed the teacher Mr. Experience. But then our understanding of experience is the best teacher at that early age was that there is this good teacher whose name was Experience, and he was superior to the teachers that we were used to. So we were looking forward literally to one day meeting Mr. Experience. Of course, well, when now we're grown, we understood that experience is the best teacher, had everything to do with the distinction between theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge. That if you are to do something practically, it would give you the best knowledge. That experience will equip you with better knowledge than the one you got through the books. That is what experience is, the best teacher means. Now, let me relate it to Rigathi Gachagua. Rigathi Gachagua, even if you don't like him politically, you must agree that he rose through the ranks curiously fast. Whether it was during his time in the provincial administration, Rigathi Gachagua rose very fast through the ranks. Even if you came to politics, you'd find that this is somebody who was elected in 2017. And by 2022, he was already a deputy president. That is a feat that very few people can achieve. But also, that is where Rigathi's problems begin, because he never has the room to grow within a certain position. He gets into that position and does not have the room to grow, to know how to navigate the challenges that come with occupying certain positions. Let's take the office of the deputy president, for instance. That, like I told you at the beginning of this video, is the second most important office in the land, whether political or otherwise. That is the second most important person in Kenya. And it has a lot of pressure. There is an unimaginable amount of pressure that comes with occupying such positions. People will blame you for things that you know nothing of. People would blame you for the things that the president could have acted on. You are being seen as the principal assistant of the president of the republic. And so when the president fails, or if the president fails, you are seen as somebody who is not doing his job. You're not assisting the president well. So it is a high pressure office. And it needs someone who has literal experience, practical experience, someone who has been in politics for long and has known how to navigate and how to handle competing interests. But then you see Rigathi Gachagua never had room. The longest he has been in politics is one term as a member of parliament for Madeira, not even a cosmopolitan place. So the challenges that were being brought to him were ethnic challenges, challenges of people from his own community. That is why even his time as the MP for Madeira, the legislation that Rigathi Gachagua could come up with or could propose were mostly about his Kikuyu people. And you can't blame him. Those are the people whose interest he was handling. So when he came to a public office with high demands, like the office of the deputy president, this man knew very little to do. However, that was not the only challenge he had. He also had something called hubris. Hubris is this excessive pride or excessive confidence in oneself, that you believe you can do things that ordinarily would have required practical experience to handle. But Rigathi was persuaded that he didn't need to grow, he didn't need to learn, he didn't need to ask around. He believed that he knew what to do, when in reality, he knew very little. Like I said, he had been a member of parliament for Madeira. Madeira is not a cosmopolitan constituency. Madeira is like my constituency of Kasipul. the people you meet there, the interests they have are so local. It is not diverse per se. And so even if you go to parliament, the things you will be advocating for, the things you will be demanding are things that are relevant to the people of Kasipul, mostly Luos. And when you come to a position of power, real power, like the deputy president's office, you need to ask around. You need to ask those who have political experience, like William Ruto, for instance, your boss. How do I navigate through this? When my people are demanding this, how do I handle this without them feeling like I'm not providing for them? Those are the things you learn. Handling competing interest. There are people from Madeira, there are people from Mount Kenya who are going to see your position as the deputy president as a community position. Yet the Constitution, on the other hand, wants you to treat your position as a national position. So how do you juggle between the two without breaking the law and also without making the people who brought you to power feel like you've abandoned them? These are things that you can't handle by just going back to what did I learn in my political science class, or this is what you're supposed to do. No, no, no. These are things that need practical experience, things that you have gone through. If you have not gone through that, you need to ask. Rigathi Gachagua didn't ask, and that is thanks to hubris. So what happened? He mistook the office of the deputy president as the Madeira constituency seat. And he focused mostly on trying to use that office to the benefit of the people of Madeira, Nyeri, and by extension, Kikuyus. Nothing wrong with doing that. However, that is not what that position is for. And regardless, since he had hubris, self-exaggerated pride, and that overconfidence, he believed that he was doing the right thing. And ladies and gentlemen, to date, Rigathi Gachagua is persuaded that that office of the deputy president, or even the presidency, is supposed to be benefiting your family and your community. And he has no apologies for that. But then that is also what brought him down, hubris. So if you are looking at Rigathi Gachagua and somebody was to ask you, what brought this rising star down? Because he was a rising star coming from one-time MP to the office of the deputy president. That is no mean task, like I said. So Rigathi Gachagua was a rising star. Yet hubris made Rigathi believe that he was all-knowing, that he knew what to do, how to do it, and even when he was doing the wrong thing, you couldn't correct him, because remember, hubris, you know everything, you are right all the time, and everyone else is wrong and is not as brilliant or as gifted as you are. And so he found himself in opposition barely 2 years after he was elected. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how hubris can bring a politician down. Because when he got into that office, Rigathi confused his position and was persuaded that he was a co-president. In fact, I remember him mentioning that he was also elected by 7.2 million people, that he was equal. He enjoyed the same mandate with William Ruto. In fact, he didn't even stop there. He said that most of the people who voted for Ruto actually voted for Ruto because of him. He is the one who made Ruto president. And that is just an example of what hubris can make you do, because it makes you feel more important than you actually are. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what brought Rigathi Gachagua down. I could have walked you through how it happened, how he started fighting William Ruto, but we've made so many videos about that, about Rigathi Gachagua on this channel. What I wanted to point for you is precisely how Rigathi came from a powerful deputy president to someone who now has to call press conference and make outrageous remarks just to stay relevant. If you found value in this video, let me know in the comment section. And if you are watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know how some of these interviews that Rigathi seemed to really love end up exposing him badly, watch this video.